This is Qtv News. I am Umudu Gajaga, and thanks for joining us. It feels great to be back on the news desk. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. At a stop on his Meet the People tour, President Barrow announces that elections scheduled for later this year will go ahead despite a voter registration postponement. 17 inmates, most of them on remand, escaped from Joshua Prison on New Year's Day. On Saturday, the governor of URR, on behalf of the First Lady, Fatoumata Barrow, and other philanthropic organizations presided over the presentation of gifts to the families of the first and second babies born in URR in 2021. A 31-year-old woman with a series of kidney-related medical problems is seeking help to get overseas treatment. And in international news, what does it say about global morals if African countries are left out of the rush to vaccinate? In sports news, a team from Senegal finally makes it through to the group stage of the CAF Champions League, becoming the first team from the country to do so. Those were the main news headlines, and now the local news in detail. Welcome and thanks for joining us. This is Qtv News. At a meeting in Ibo Town on Tuesday, President Barrow said the presidential election will go ahead as planned, despite the announcement by the IEC to defer the commencement of voter registration to a later date due to logistical challenges. Aliou Cisse has more.
In his address at a well-attended rally in Ibo Town, President Barrow said his government will not compromise the election and the dictates of the Constitution. Gambians will head to the polls on 4 December to elect their next president. He describes the election as an important one for Gambians to either vote for his government for continued development, democracy and peace, or otherwise. He reaffirmed his respect for the Constitution, saying he wouldn't embark on such a tour during the pandemic if not for the fact that it is provided for in the Constitution. On governance, he said there are an independent and functional judiciary and National Assembly.
Election bi nu mu di mel on the 4th of December dinañ def election bir Gambia fi ñun affaire election duñ ko fayanto affaire constitution ñun duñ ko fayanto constitution bi lu waré fa ñu def lolu.
Speaking earlier on, poor roads and drainage systems in addition to floods top the concerns of the people, which was corroborated by all the speakers, including Honorable Fatoumata Jawara of Talinding constituency and Halaji Drame of Joshua constituency. Ibo Town and surrounds are prone to floods, which has made the area unbearable to live in, especially during the rainy season when most parts of the locality become inaccessible. They pleaded for government's intervention with health personnel and drugs to sustain their philanthropist-funded health facilities in the area. They also want a new ambulance. There is a need to develop Talinding Market and the Women's Garden. The youth are appealing for the development of the Park Jola in Ibo Town. Honorable Fatoumata Jawara wants a presidential pardon for the women currently in prison. On education, they want the rehabilitation of the old structures at the new Johnson Law Basic School, also known as Kandiba School. In response, President Barrow said a standard road will be built for the people of Joshua and Ibo Town as part of the OIC projects. He informed the crowd that health officials will visit the health facilities to see possible ways to support. He denied claims that he gave directives for some women vendors to be evicted from the markets. Bakari Baji, the Youth and Sports Minister, who is a native of Ibo Town, called on his people to rally behind the president and government. His decision to join the president, he said, is to contribute to national development. He informed the meeting that the government prioritized youth and sports development. He revealed that funds have been secured to rehabilitate the stadium.
Wa Gambia ñun luñ bëgg moy président bi nga xamné ni dafa jël alali réew mi délé ko ci réew mi liggéey réew mi mu rafet. Té loolu lañ am ci président Barrow ak nguuram. Ci walum ndaw ñi ak walum jigéen ñi. Nguuri président Barrow taxawal na ñaari fonds yi nga xamné ñu ko ay Women Enterprise Fund ak Youth Development Fund.
Musa Drame, the last minister, said development is a shared responsibility between the central government and the local councils, who should plow back to the people 60% of the revenues collected from them. He informed them that a feasibility study will be conducted as the situation of Ibo Town and surrounds require proper study for a proper solution. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
17 inmates escaped from Joswong prison on New Year's Day. Most of the escapees were on remand awaiting trial. I visited the correctional facility earlier today, and here is my report. This is where the 17 inmates made their escape. There is no damage to the metal door, padlock or wall of the block. The incident happened around 7:30 p.m. when dinner was being served to the inmates. Somehow, they managed to find an escape route. Among the escapees were those charged with offences such as possession of prohibited drugs, trafficking, housebreaking with stealing, and robbery. Luke Jatta, the Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service, blamed the incident on the negligence of the prison officers on duty at the time.
One could say in the sense that it's negligence or work of duties by the officers, knowing the fact that this is how the security works, because you have standard procedures, knowing that in as much as you have inmates in your custody, always the gate has to be closed. So knowing that, because this was something that was foreseen by the inmates, and then they took that opportunity. So it's more tied to negligence of duty.
Prison escapes are not uncommon at the Joswong facility. There have been 2 other incidents reported since 2018, which were all blamed on negligence of the officers on duty. Asked if the prison officers are well trained on security of the premises, Jatta says the officers are trained to high standards.
Escapes at Joswong of the same kind and the same pattern, meaning that I think it is more of the professional ethics that these officers, we are professional trained, but we understand that because of through their etiquette themselves, and then they allow this to happen. But professionally they are taught, and then we have this best standard procedures to making sure that these people are lawful custody, and while they are there, the security is paramount. But it's rather unfortunate, as we understand, prison escapes is everywhere, but to this magnitude, it's something that's overwhelming.
5 officers have been detained in connection with the escape of the prisoners, pending an investigation. But why would a prison which is well secured in terms of security officers guarding it, and a 4-meter-high wall with barbed wire on it, became an escape route for inmates who should have been under lock and key?
It happened at a time when officers who were on duties at the time, because from 6 to 7, when dinner was to be served by the officers in charge to the inmates, and then that's when these inmates took the opportunity, because knowing the fact that they knew some of the security lapses that could be, because they have been there, so they used that opportunity. And I believe it was a planting by the inmates, and we believed so, because the way it happened, knowing that this was something that the inmates were foreseen, looking at the terrain of the security of officers who were on the ground.
The recent escape of murder convict Buba Drame in late December at the State Central Prison Mile 2 has exposed security lapses at the detention facilities in the country. At the time of this broadcast, there were reports that Buba had been arrested and detained in Senegal, allegedly following an arrest by Interpol. We were able to get confirmation of this from Luke Jatta, the Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service. Mamadou Gajaga, Qtv News. The Governor of URR, on behalf of the First Lady, Madam Fatoumata Barrow, on Saturday presided over the presentation of gifts to the families of the first and second babies born in URR in 2021. Fode Mane was at the presentation ceremony, and his story is narrated by Loli M. Camara.
The presentation was attended by the Director of Health, representatives of various donor institutions, nurses and other staff of Basse Hospital. The first baby was born at 3:05 a.m. to Haja Silla of Sutukonding. She received gifts in cash of 15,000 dalasi from the First Lady's Foundation. The second baby was born at 3:47 a.m. to Fatoumata Nyimahar of Kumbija. She also received gifts and a cash prize of 10,000 dalasi from Gamtel and Car Power. Sambaba, the governor of URR, congratulated the mothers and urged them to make the best use of the gifts and the cash for the well-being of their babies. Governor Ba was delighted that the tradition of donating to new year borns is now decentralized.
I know very well it will serve a long way in trying to help the newly born babies to build up a foundation. As we know, this is a clarion call from the First Lady and the foundation, including Gamtel, Gamcel, and the what we call car power. The other beautiful part of it is the decentralization aspect of it, because we know some years ago this event used to happen in Banjul, but now that the decentralization process has occurred, it's a clear indication that the First Lady, has the interests of the Gambian women, the Gambian children at heart.
The Director of Health in URR, Lamin Sise, said the gifts will go a long way to improve the lives and livelihoods of the mothers and their babies.
I feel elated in the sense that this is going to the beneficiaries who are in the communities, and this will go a long way in improving the lives and the livelihood of the infant and the parents and the caregivers, because they are supposed to do certain things, especially the clothing aspect, and if this thing has to come at this point in time, it's very timely.
Mr. Sise also urged pregnant mothers to visit health facilities for maternal and postnatal checkups. All the other babies born on the 1st of January also received gifts. The parents of the babies were delighted and thanked all the institutions for their support. For Qtv News, Lolly M. Kamara.
We will now take a short break, and still to come, we have local and international news stories. Welcome back, and this is Qtv News. A 31-year-old woman residing in Bakau is seeking medical assistance for overseas treatment. According to Fatoumata Njai's medical report issued by Sarab Medical Center, she is diagnosed with bilateral renal stones on both kidneys. QTV's Omar Pijalo visited her, and this is his report.
According to the medical report, dated 2nd January 2021, the patient was first seen by the Sarab Medical Center in November 2016. After examination, she was referred to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, where she received treatment on the left kidney. After several follow-ups by Sarab Medical Center, the hospital found that the best option for the patient is to seek treatment abroad. Fatoumata Njai said even though it was not until 2016 that she went to Sarab, she has over 10 years' history of kidney problems and has visited various hospitals in the country seeking for treatment. Jeneba Kamara, the patient's mother, made a desperate plea for help.
When I heard about my daughter's sickness, I collapsed because she is my hope. She used to do everything for me. I am poor. Therefore, I am seeking assistance from the government, NGOs, philanthropists, and individuals to help my daughter to go for treatment overseas.
Fatmata's husband Amadou Diawo said his wife has been battling with kidney problems for over a decade, adding that the family has exhausted all they have and will not be able to afford the cost of overseas medical treatment. Fatimata was working as a cook at a local hotel. She quit her job due to her illness. She now depends on her husband, who is not financially able to pay for her overseas medical expenses. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar P. Jallo.
A family in Basse have been rendered homeless after a fire outbreak in Kabakama when the inferno destroyed the family's house on Sunday morning. Our reporter Fode Mane visited the scene, and his report is narrated by Loli M. Kamara.
Other valuables such as seats, clothing, beds, refrigerators, televisions, furniture, foodstuff, many have all perished in the inferno. According to the landlord Abubakar John, the fire started around 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, caused by electric short circuit in one of the rooms. After discovering the fire, he ran outside and called for support as he was alone at home. Expressing sadness at the loss in court, the landlord is calling for support.
Bagaso min janita dal asiatale, yeah, because no man my wife la bunko from bagaso min from bije asiatale.
It is so sad. You can see that many items have perished here. Our foodstuff, refrigerators, televisions and other important goods are all gone. We are calling on kind-hearted people and the government to help us.
Bintu Jata, a housewife, was in tears. She lost money and other valuables.
I
am really sad. I lost all my clothes except the ones I'm now wearing. I also lost $4,000 in the fire. I am calling on philanthropists to support us. Abdul Kulubari, a neighbor who took part in the efforts to quench the fire, has this to say.
I would give all landlords advices. That is, electricity is not something that people should joke with. If you see anything in your house that you know you don't understand, confirm and call the NAWEC people to come and do their job. Because this comes through the socket, as I told you, from the socket, and it goes through the wiring to the refrigerator and the stand fan. That's where the disaster started. So this is something that people should understand.
It is a difficult moment for the John Kunda family, and they are begging for support in cash or kind to help them overcome the terrible fire incident that has left them in despair. For QTV News, Loli M. Kamara.
We will take another short break, and still to come, international and sports news. Welcome back. In international news, as wealthier nations roll out vaccines against COVID-19, in the majority of African countries, getting a COVID-19 vaccine is still a waiting game fraught with uncertainty. Mahmoud Mboj looks at what this says about our world.
There are currently 60 vaccine candidates in trials, including those already being rolled out. The Pfizer-BioNTech jab, the first to be rolled out, AstraZeneca and Oxford, Moderna, Russia's Sputnik 5, and China's Sinopharm. None in Africa has reached clinical trials. The head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, John Kengasong, in an interview on Thursday, told reporters that significant vaccination campaigns on the continent will begin in April. That date, however, Dr. Kengasong continued, is a long way to go, given that this virus transmits very quickly, adding that in Africa, the second wave is here with a vengeance. We cannot delay. We need those vaccines and need them now, he declared. The number of new cases in Africa has increased in recent weeks by up to 20%, and deaths increased by more than 25%, according to CDC data. Currently, more than 2.5 million infections have been recorded on the continent and more than 60,000 deaths. The threat grows even more urgent with the recent detection of a new, more contagious variant of the virus in South Africa, which has been spreading ferociously, infecting about 60% of the 82,000 new cases recorded in a single week. Even though so far the variant has not been detected elsewhere, there still exists the fear that it might, or other more virulent mutations might occur elsewhere. Rwanda, the DRC, and others have also seen a recent surge. Closer to home in Senegal, President Macky Sall on Tuesday announced a new state of emergency in response to record cases of new infections sweeping parts of the country. And starting Wednesday, a new night curfew will be enforced in the regions of Dakar and Thiès. Vaccines are highly instrumental in crushing the disease for good, health officials say, but there has been a worry that resource-strapped areas of the world would likely face a long and torturous battle to get hold of vaccines. According to a new study by researchers at Johns Hopkins University, by mid-November, wealthy nations had reserved 51% of various vaccine doses, even though they are home to only 14% of the world's population. And researchers at Duke University in America found that a handful of countries have secured more supply than their populations actually need. Canada, for instance, has secured enough vaccines to vaccinate its entire population 5 times. The major blockers to vaccinations beginning in Africa, according to Dr. Kengasong, are global availability of doses and financing. Many African countries, including the Gambia, are banking on the COVAX initiative, spearheaded by the WHO and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. They have announced that 1.3 billion doses of promising vaccine candidates had been secured. But for now, the scheme will only cover the doses needed to cover 20% of a country's population. If conditions do not change, according to the Vaccine Alliance, 67 nations will be able to vaccinate only 1 in 10 people over the next year. So even countries that have signed up to the scheme are working hard to also secure vaccines by other means. Egypt, Morocco, and other North African and Middle Eastern countries have recently rolled out or promised to roll out China's Sinopharm vaccine. Only a global mass immunization program will bring the disease under control worldwide, according to health experts. So there are no winners with the current vaccine apartheid. For Qtv News, I am Mamadou Mbouch.
In sports news, Senegalese side Teungueth FC has made it to the group stage of the CAF Champions League after defeating Raja Casablanca 3-1 on penalty shootout in Casablanca on Tuesday. I take a look at the significance of their achievement. There were scenes of wild jubilations for the Senegalese side after making history, securing a place in the group phase of the CAF Champions League, Africa's topmost club competition. In recent years, clubs in West Africa have struggled against North African sides. Teungueth held on even though they were under immense pressure for much of the game. In the early years of the competition, when it was called the African Cup of Champions Clubs, West African teams did well, with Asante Kotoko, winners twice, runners-up 5 times, and Hearts of Oak, winners once, runners-up twice, both of Ghana. Haifa FC of Guinea-Conakry, winners 3 times and runners-up twice. ASEC Mimosas, winners once, runners-up once, and Stade Abidjan, winners once, both of Ivory Coast. And Enyimba of Nigeria, winners twice, are all testaments to how well West African teams used to do. What was most unbelievable about the game was the state of the pitch. It was waterlogged, almost to the point of being unplayable. However, despite the poor condition of the playing surface of Mohammed V Stadium pitch, play continued on the water-inundated pitch, making passing and running difficult. The tie was decided on spot kicks. After this match ended 0-0 in regulation time, the same score as in the first leg, thus leaving the sides neck and neck on aggregate. Tengage prevailed in the ensuing penalty shootouts 3-1 to the dismay of the host team. Gambia player Jibril Sila featured for the Senegalese side. Tengage had eliminated Gambia club Armed Forces 3-1 on aggregate over 2 legs in the preliminary rounds, and Raja Casablanca knocked out Brikama United in the 2019 CAF Champions League preliminaries 7-3 on aggregate. Mamudu Gajaga, QTV News. Before we end this bulletin of the news, let's have a quick look at our main news stories. At a stop on his Meet the People tour, President Barrow announces that elections scheduled for later this year will go ahead despite the voter registration postponement. 17 inmates, most of whom on remand, escaped from Joswang prison on New Year's Day. On Saturday, the governor of URR, on behalf of the First Lady, Madam Fatoumata Barrow, and other philanthropic organizations presided over the presentation of gifts to the families of the first and second babies born in URR in 2021. A 31-year-old woman with a series of kidney-related medical problems is seeking help to get overseas treatment. In international news, what does it say about global morals if African countries are left out of the rush to vaccinate? In sports news, a team from Senegal finally make it through to the group stage of the CAF Champions League, becoming the first from that country to do so. That's all we have for you in this bulletin of the news. Thank you very much for watching. Join us at 10 for another bulletin.